Hey guys, Nintendo Nat here. 20 years ago, a new batch of consoles graced our living rooms, and with them a ton of great games.
What the? 2001 wasn't 20 years ago. I'm not old, damn it. I'm not old!
But you know what else came out that year? A bunch of hot garbage. For every good game, there were at least a dozen bad ones. And since I'm primarily a YouTube channel that focuses on video game history and nostalgia, I thought it would be awesome to go back and look at the worst games to come out in the year 2001. Let's get started. Sonic Adventure 2 makes its way onto the bottom of our list, and for good reason. A follow-up to the Dreamcast original, many claim that Sonic Adventure 2 is the reason the Dreamcast failed, and why Sega got out of the console business entirely. Shadow is too edgy. Sonic is too goofy. The rest of the cast is absolutely forgettable. And the story? I'm pretty sure it's a ripoff of my 7-page masterpiece, Speed vs. Dark, that I wrote in the 5th grade. I mean, come on. Speed, Sonic, Dark, Shadow. Yuji Naka stole my entire game. What makes Sonic Adventure 2 really stick out are the graphics. Just look at them. Bleh. The gameplay is so much slower than the old Sonic games, and they cut out my favorite part of Sonic Adventure. You know, the part where you get to fish. But the soundtrack is pretty good if you're into early 2000s butt rock, and as a millennial, that's all I listen to. So that last one may have been a bit too rough, but this one is 100% valid. Halo 1 is the worst Halo game in the entire franchise. Easily. Everything that makes Halo good, the multiplayer, the graphics, dual wielding, cutting out split-screen couch co-op, all of that is missing here. What you're left with is a mediocre campaign following Halo as he tries to stop some big-ass ring in outer space from blowing up. I don't know, man. I just play Halo Online, and this one doesn't have online. Now, you can play this game over a local network, and that's exactly what my friends and I did in the school's library of my senior year. That was pretty fun for school, but sucked compared to everything else. We couldn't scream, cuss, or even talk while we played. The dude that had it on his flash drive was like, "Hey man, don't make too much of a scene or we'll get caught." Well, guess what, Chris? I'm telling everyone now, and Halo sucks. That last one might have been on the list purely because of a bad experience I had. I get that. But what happens when the entire experience is bad? You have Final Fantasy X. Geez, where do I even begin with this one? Titus is annoying and pointless to the story. Yuna is an idiot. This lady is just a tig-bitty goth GF. Riku is annoying as hell. This guy is a cat and barely does anything. Auron is pretty cool. And Wakka is the single most annoying character in this game. Now, some people will say the battle system is good. I would say it's lazy. The active time battle system works so much better. That's why it was the standard for a decade. This version of the combat system is so easy to cheese, because you can just haste and then hit 25 times before the enemy realizes it's lunchtime. The entire game is super linear. It's just as linear as Final Fantasy XIII. The story ends up making no sense, but to be honest, that's a problem with most Final Fantasy games, so. People consider this to be one of the best Final Fantasy games, but I find it absolutely dreadful. In fact, the only reason I bought the HD remasters on PS3 was for Final Fantasy X-2, a much better game by all accounts. It was also $1. We've beat up on all the other trash consoles, but you know what Nintendo had coming out in 2011? Some real baby games like Super Smash Bros. Melee. First of all, what's with this roster? 2 Marios, 2 Links, 2 Pikachus, 2 anime swordsmen. Melee more than doubled the lineup from the original game, but most of these picks are ass. Melee only has 1 cutscene in the entire game, unlike the reveal trailers for every Smash game to follow it. Don't get me wrong, the intro kicks ass and still gets my 10-year-old heart pumping, but it lacks the same level of grandeur as literally every other Smash game, and unlocking Mewtwo sucks. But the worst part, the absolute worst part of Melee, is the competitive community. I get it that people love the GameCube and nostalgia, but Melee is pretty outdated as a Smash game by current standards. Smash is a celebration of all things Nintendo, and Melee ultimately feels like an expansion to the original Smash Bros., whereas entries after Melee's really reveled in their Nintendo and video game history. Also, one time I helped set up a Melee tournament in college as an attempt to make friends. I spent an entire afternoon training so I wouldn't make a fool of myself, only to lose in the first round to someone using Link. I'm still pretty salty about that almost a decade later. Shadow of the Colossus is one of my favorite games of all time. Everything from the beautiful and mystique boss creatures to the wide open fields to the well-crafted story about a hero's fall from grace. It's almost a perfect video game, even by today's standards. Someone explained to me how the same team that made this masterpiece ended up out Eco in 2001. I know this game has fans, but God, I can barely play this game. I don't know if it's the slower gameplay, the focus on puzzles as opposed to combat, or this kid's stupid face. Eco feels like an attempt to make a game that is fundamentally different from other games, and I respect that. But at the same time, there's a reason you don't see a bunch of games trying to copy what this one did. Eco feels more like a test of patience as opposed to an engaging piece of interactive entertainment. I can appreciate how it is attempting to tell a story and showcase a style of gameplay that is incredibly unique, especially to video games. But I can't hold this title on high when the gameplay is just so mediocre. Maybe this is an example of a game that deserves a full remake from the ground up to make it more in line with modern standards. Or maybe it's just best to take what this title does well with its stories, characters, settings, and atmosphere and make a better game with it. Plus, this little boy looks like a bitch. Devil May Cry is one of my favorite game franchises, with DMC3 being one of the best PS2 games ever released. So what the hell happened here? Most people seem to hate Devil May Cry 2 the most for its garbage story and assassination of Dante as a character, but at least Devil May Cry 2 is fun to play through. Devil May Cry is a good foundation for what the series could become, with fun characters, a cheesy story, and spooky locale. Unfortunately, the moment-to-moment gameplay is hurt so much by stiff controls, an unwieldy camera, and a simplified version of what hack-and-slash genre would become. I think there are redeeming qualities here, just like every game on this list, but it's a complete slog through to play this game despite it clocking in at around 5 hours in length. Just skip this one, and 2. Play Devil May Cry 3 through 5 and forget the rest of these titles exist. Or better yet, just make a new Devil May Cry title that makes the first 2 non-canonical or something. Trish deserves better. I might get in trouble for this one. Let me point some things out very quickly. Paper Mario and its sequel, The Thousand Year Door, are good games. They're just not very good RPGs. My opinion didn't change on this until recently, so give me some grace on this one. The problem isn't necessarily that the RPG elements and combat of Paper Mario are bad, it's just they aren't very good. The biggest issue is definitely speed. While slow turn-based battles were the norm for the early 2000s, the speed of turn-based RPGs has only gotten faster over the years. Paper Mario is already slow by the standards of 2001, and by now it feels almost like a slog. The need to perform reaction commands is fun and keeps the player engaged, but it slows down the combat so much that it desincentivizes the player from engaging in combat. Add to the fact that after a while your experience gains are slowed to a crawl. Fighting enemies becomes more and more of a hassle, especially when you just want to move on with the game. I have a lot of complicated feelings about the Paper Mario series as a whole. I really enjoyed the first 3, hated Sticker Star, tolerated Color Splash, and then enjoyed Origami King last year. But this entire series has an identity problem, and I think a lot of that stems from developers being unable to translate the slow combat of the first games to a more modern standard. The game still looks nice though, and that's saying something for a system that primarily looks like ass across the board. I actually kind of like this one. Metal Gear Solid 2 might be one of the single most convoluted games ever made. The amount of gibberish that comes out of these characters' mouths is pure and raw gobbledygook. There's this entire annoying section of the game that forces you into an escort mission, alongside a sniping portion that just makes my blood boil. And there's the entire ending that turns the game into a discount hack and slash against enemies who are unlike any other in the title. This game is great. Seriously, for as bizarre as Metal Gear Solid 2 is, it's still one of the best games of the generation. Kojima's writing, while absolute nonsense, is so ahead of its time by our current standards that it feels like it was written in the 2010s, not the late 90s. The graphics are pretty rock solid for an early PS2 title, and the gameplay, oof. While I definitely prefer later games in the series from a gameplay perspective, Metal Gear Solid 2 did what a great sequel should do when it comes to gameplay. It just refines and polishes the experience of the original to a mirror shine. Of all the games released in 2001, this is probably the absolute best one. Like all of Hideo Kojima's games, I love them for their absolute cheesiness while exploring serious topics regarding the modern world. This man is an absolute genius, and I will stand him until the day I die, or all of you unsubscribe from this garbage. I've saved the worst for last, and anyone who knows my taste in games probably knows what number one is. There are a few games I quit playing. Most of the time, I drop a game out of boredom, or just because I want to move on to something else. Silent Hill 2 is a rare example of a game I utterly despise. I should make it very clear right away, I'm not a fan of the horror genre, in movies, games, or television. I think certain elements of horror are interesting, but the genre as a whole usually leaves me bored. There are, of course, subgenres of horror that I really enjoy, especially when it gets into existential horror. But for video games, yeah, I'll play just about anything else. And Silent Hill 2 contains literally everything I hate about not just horror games, but games from the early 6th generation as a whole. Silent Hill 2 has stiff, boring gameplay that evolves into what is essentially unpromoted quick-time events. Unprompted. Silent Hill 2 has stiff, boring gameplay that evolves to what are essentially unprompted quick-time events. The developer likely did this to de-emphasize combat so you wouldn't get hung up on it, but that just leaves exploration and puzzle solving as Silent Hill 2's main avenue of interaction. And that's where things go downhill. Silent Hill 2 feels like a game that's meant to make players go insane. Puzzles make no sense. Exploration is vague at best. The idea of a streamlined experience is lost in Silent Hill 2 as the player is forced to run around without direction in an attempt to find the next objective. Now, this can work in a game like The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild that finds a core gameplay loop revolving around exploration and puzzle solving. It doesn't work in a game that has a linear set of events and you're forced to figure out how to solve said events with little direction. I'm not saying that every game needs to hold the player's hand, but I don't think the game should require a guide to quickly and efficiently play through it. Beyond this major issue, the story itself is fine. I never got far enough into it to really warrant any deep interest, but my experience with other Silent Hill titles leads me to believe I probably wouldn't care about this game in the long run. The main character is trash, the voice acting is garbage, everything is covered in a thick fog that doesn't make things more mysterious, it just makes the world seem more hollow and empty. Of all the games on this list, I think most of them could be improved with a few minor fixes in a remaster or a port, but not Silent Hill 2. It's probably one of my least favorite experiences on the PlayStation 2, and I own Rocky. Because of this, and the high blood pressure this game gave me, Silent Hill 2 is the worst game released in 2001, and probably one of the biggest examples of a game I see everyone love that I can't stand. Wow, that was awesome! 10 horrible games, and it only took a little while to go over them. I hope you all enjoyed this new style of video. New episodes of Nintendo Nat are going to be coming out every week from now on. I had fun making video game documentaries for almost 3 years now, but it's time to follow my true dream of becoming an internet personality and influencer. Subscribe, ring the bell, turn on notifications, wait endlessly for new videos to show up and then quickly binge them the moment they arrive so you can feel hollow inside once again. This is how YouTube works. And be sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn, Google+, MySpace, and my Roblox account to see whatever I'm doing next. I don't know, why do people always want you to follow them on social media? If anything, this video should be a deterrent from you following me to hear my opinions at great lengths. And I'm not doing the story of the PlayStation. I'm Nintendo Nat, for crying out loud. See you next time!
Wait. Did you say anything about Animal Crossing?
No.
Okay, good. You get to eat.
Thank you.